This HOA Karen smashed my trash bin 57 different times with her shiny $60,000 Cadillac Escalade, so I swapped out the flimsy plastic one for a concrete can, sat back, and watched her total her own luxury SUV. What started as her daily little bullying game ended in criminal charges, a $12,000 payout, and a brutal reality check about what happens when you mess with the wrong neighbor. Picture it. Dawn is barely breaking, the air still quiet, when suddenly, crack! The sharp snap of plastic splitting in half, followed by the grating sound of bumper against pavement. A pearl-white Escalade speeds off, leaving behind garbage exploding. Across my driveway like party confetti. The thing about bullies? They never think anyone will fight back. But this time, I came with concrete proof. Literally. By the time the dust settled, this self-declared compliance officer had destroyed her own ride, uncovered her $47,000 embezzlement scheme, and found out the hard way that I'm not the type of neighbor to be pushed around with fake authority and clipboards. Let me ask you, what would you do if your neighbor treated your driveway like a demolition derby every single morning? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'm curious if HOA chaos like this happens where you live, too. But before we get to the explosion, let me rewind. My name's Marcus Holloway, 45 years old, licensed electrician for over 2 decades, freshly divorced, working through custody of my 2 teens, Emma, 16, and Tyler, 14. We live in Pinewood Gardens, one of those cookie-cutter HOA subdivisions in suburban Ohio, where lawns must be cut exactly 2.5 inches tall and your mailbox only comes in 3 approved shades. I bought the corner lot place 3 years back, right after the divorce. New chapter, new home, space for the kids, decent schools, safe neighborhood, or so I thought. What I didn't bargain for was Brenda Whitmore, 52, widowed ex-bank manager, no kids, and bored enough to memorize every line of the HOA bylaws. She drives a pearl-white Escalade that's bigger than most studio apartments and walks around like the sheriff of Pinewood. No official title, but she calls herself compliance officer and acts like our HOA dues are her personal piggy bank. Now here's the geography problem. My corner lot means trash pickup requires me to leave my can right by the street every Tuesday morning. The city law is clear, within 3 feet of the curb. And guess what? That's the exact path Brenda takes on her power walk every day at 6:15 a.m. The first incident was a September Tuesday, second week of school. I'm making breakfast, kids rushing around, coffee brewing. Out of nowhere, boom. Plastic shatters, like a shotgun blast. I run outside to see my brand new can in pieces, garbage scattered across the driveway. And there's Brenda, backing up her Escalade, rolling the window down with the fakest sympathy you've ever seen. "Oh dear," she coos, not even pretending to mean it. "These roads are just too tight. I hope that wasn't important." Not important. I'd bought that can the week before for $23 at Home Depot, but I let it slide, thinking it was an accident. I spent 20 minutes picking banana peels and cereal boxes off the driveway while my kids hid, embarrassed their dad was crawling around in pajamas. That week, it happened 3 more times. Same time, same sound, same smug exit. By Friday, I stopped, believing in accidents. The following Tuesday, my suspicions were confirmed by Mrs. Olivia, my elderly neighbor. She leaned on her cane, shaking her head. "She has plenty of room other side," she whispered. "She does this on purpose." Tried talking to Brenda. Stopped her during one of her smug patrol walks. "Hey, about the trash can..." But before I could finish, she cut me off with a syrupy smile. "Marcus, you're still learning how communities work. Oversized cans block traffic. Maybe you should rethink your timing." Timing? Like there's a magical hour when the garbage truck doesn't need the can out? That night, I pulled up city codes, HOA bylaws, state ordinances. Trash cans on collection day are protected property. The HOA? No authority over the public curbside. By the end of the month, I'd already replaced 4 destroyed bins at a total of $92. That's when Brenda's attitude changed. She started, smiling while doing it, making eye contact as she crushed my cans. Mid-October, she escalated. I came home to find a certified letter taped to my door. It reeked of expensive paper and legal jargon. Improper receptacle placement creating a hazard, it said. Violation section 4.73. 72 hours to correct, or $50 a day in fines. She had clearly pushed this through while the HOA board was still recovering from the evidence I'd presented at the last meeting. But here's where my electrician brain helped me. When something doesn't make sense, you dig until it does. After cross-checking city ordinances with county regulations, I struck gold. City law requires bins within 3 feet of the curb. HOA authority stops at the property line. They literally had no legal grounds. That weekend, I set up my Ring camera, hired a surveyor, and even got Mrs. Olivia to write a statement. Her hands trembled as she signed. "I don't want trouble," she whispered, "but this is wrong." Meanwhile, Brenda went nuclear on social media. Nextdoor lit up with posts about reckless trash placement and dangerous corner obstacles, endangering kids. The comments became a war zone. 3 loyal Brenda defenders versus the entire neighborhood calling her delusional. Then came the kicker. A buddy of mine at City Hall, Dave in permits, called me laughing. "Marcus, you're not going to believe this. We got 4 complaints about your corner last night. Different names, different stories, all submitted at 2:47 a.m., identical writing style. By the next HOA board meeting, I had a binder so thick it could stop a bullet." The room was packed, with more residents than ever. The president fumbled with his tie. Brenda strutted in wearing her power blazer, but I saw it, the tiny shake in her hand when she reached for her water glass. She knew she was cornered. When the agenda reached old business, I rose with a folder under my arm. 8:47. I'd like to address the violation concerning trash can placement. The hum of fluorescent tubes echoed as the room froze. I recited the municipal ordinance word for word, laid out my survey data proving full compliance, and casually mentioned that I'd consulted Amanda Sterling, an attorney well-versed in HOA disputes. She found the pattern of enforcement worth looking into. Brenda's complexion drained. President Thornfield cleared his throat once, twice, 3 times before stammering, "We'll need further review. Let's table this." Translation. They had no case, and the room knew it. But Brenda wasn't finished. As we left, she cornered me beneath the buzzing security lamps in the lot. Her mask slipped. 9:37. "You think you're clever?" she hissed, loud enough for nearby homeowners to hear. "People like you come in here and act like rules don't matter. Well, this is only the beginning." Mrs. Rodriguez audibly gasped. Jim Torres studied his keys like they held state secrets. The ugly undertone in her words was impossible to miss. Luckily, my phone, peeking from my shirt pocket, captured every poisonous syllable. That night, Emma asked why the lady hated us. Tyler wanted to know if we'd have to move again. I tucked them in, promising stability, though privately I was tallying costs. New bins, hours of paperwork, attorney fees stacking up. Yet something had shifted. Neighbors were whispering about abuse of power. Brenda's public meltdown had pulled the curtain back. The very next morning, her SUV crawled past my trash can instead of ramming it, like a general sizing up enemy defenses. A change in tactics. More trouble was coming. By November, Pinewood. Gardens was in a deep freeze, and Brenda launched her next offensive. While I celebrated my small victory, she dug through the bylaws like a prosecutor prepping for trial. The attack came in volleys. A citation for grass height, apparently 2.75 inches, exceeded the 2.5 limit. A notice about my mailbox color fading, from heritage blue to unauthorized weathered navy, and fines for 3 tiny screen tiers you'd need binoculars to see. Each carried a $50 penalty and 10-day deadline. So I grabbed a tape measure and camera, spending Saturday documenting identical violations. Thornfield's lawn at 3 inches, Patterson's faded mailbox, half of Maple Street with shredded screens. Yet only my home drew punishment. Meanwhile, at Home Depot's contractor desk, I mentioned my woes to Dale Kowalski, a concrete man with decades of experience. He chuckled. City code doesn't say what a trash bin must be made of. Plastic, steel, concrete. As long as it's within size limits, you're fine. His words planted an idea that would grow into Brenda's nightmare. One $47 investment in concrete mix, rebar, and a modified plastic shell later, I had a fortress disguised as a normal can. My kids laughed while helping mix cement in the garage. Classic rock blaring. The alkaline smell of setting concrete pulled me back to childhood memories of working with my dad. From the outside, my can was ordinary. Inside, it was a 60-pound immovable object. Monday morning, I placed it in the usual spot. At 6:15, Brenda's Escalade charged as always. The impact was startlingly different, a dull thunk instead of cracking plastic, followed by metal shrieking against stone. Her running board bent. My can didn't budge. From the kitchen, I sipped coffee while she sat frozen in her SUV. Then she reversed and tried again from another angle. More damage. For her, not me. Perfectly legal, too. No rules broken, no code. Violated. The next week turned into a comedy of errors. Each day she rammed harder, scarring her luxury vehicle while my can stood smug and unbroken. By week's end, she'd racked up nearly $800 in damage. Neighbors noticed. For once, the whispers weren't about me. By mid-November, she'd gone from nosy neighbor to obsessed investigator. Her Escalade, once pristine, was now patched with dents and scratches, yet she couldn't stop herself. Residents spotted her, circling at odd hours. Mrs. Olivia phoned one morning, voice trembling. "Marcus, that woman was in your driveway with a flashlight and a bathroom scale. She was trying to weigh your trash can." I laughed at the image of Brenda, blazer, and flats, sneaking around like a wannabe detective. Her sleuthing escalated. She grilled Jim Torres at the hardware store about concrete sales, stalked my socials, media for hints, and finally tried to weaponize City Hall. One Thursday, a weary inspector named Pete knocked. Clipboard in hand, he sighed. "We got a complaint about unauthorized concrete structures on your property." The boredom in his voice said it all. He knew exactly what kind of nonsense this was. I led Pete around to the side of the house where my suspicious trash cans sat. He bent over, looked it up and down for maybe half a minute, then shook his head. "It's a bin, not a footing. No permits, no violations. Honestly, I've seen people build half a carport without anyone blinking an eye." That should have ended it, but Brenda wasn't done. A week later, an official HOA notice landed in my mailbox. It demanded immediate access to my yard for a compliance inspection. The language was laughably legalistic, clearly drafted by Brenda and rubber-stamped by President Thornfield. According to them, they needed to verify exterior modifications for safety risks. Luckily, I'd been preparing. After the first round of nonsense, I'd spent evenings poring over case law and HOA authority limits. The precedent was crystal clear. Narrett v. Lakeside Village. The ruling said HOAs can't just wander onto private property fishing for violations, unless there's a legitimate emergency or probable cause. So my response was polite, direct, and unmovable. No entry without a warrant or a fire truck in the driveway. If they wanted to admire my garbage container, they could do it from the curb like everyone else. The thought of Brenda fuming over that letter was almost as satisfying as mixing the concrete itself. Meanwhile, her daily ramming campaign was taking a visible toll. Each morning, her Escalade limped away a little worse. The side step drooped. Like a snapped wing, the bumper was riddled with spider cracks, and one headlamp rattled ominously with every bump. My can. untouched. Neighbors started taking notice. On a Saturday coffee run, I overheard 3 different conversations in line at the bakery, all about the lunatic who keeps smashing into the same trash can. Mrs. Rodriguez had started timing Brenda's hits with a stopwatch. Teenagers on Elm Street turned it into a betting pool, $10 on whether she'd clip the left fender or the right that day. Even my kids couldn't ignore the circus. Emma groaned. "Dad, kids at school are asking if we're the family with the concrete trash lady. Do I laugh or crawl under my desk?" Tyler, ever the entrepreneur, had a different angle. "We should sell tickets. $5 a seat. I'd have my college fund by spring." The real shift came thanks to Patricia Lopez, the one sensible voice on the board. After a community potluck, she caught me near the coffee urn and lowered her voice. "Marcus, you need to know something. Brenda's been lobbying Gerald for expanded powers, property inspections, stricter building approvals, even background checks on contractors. But that's not all." Patricia glanced over her shoulder before continuing. "She's been pushing these maintenance contracts hard, always with proposals ready, like she's rehearsed them. And the company names? Ones I've never even heard of." That conversation lit a fuse. If Brenda's obsession with rules wasn't just about control, maybe it was about money. So that night I swapped bedtime math help and history notes for a different kind of homework. Combing through municipal databases. Public filings are gold mines if you know where to dig. By Sunday evening, my hunch paid off. A business registration popped up. Whitmore Construction LLC filed just 6 months earlier. Brenda held 40% ownership. Her husband, Richard, was listed as president. I traced the timeline. Company formed in May, first HOA contract bid in July, Brenda's harassment of me beginning in September. The dates lined up like dominoes. I dug deeper. Over 4 months, Whitmore Construction had landed 7 HOA contracts, landscaping, trims, sidewalk patch jobs, community center repainting, playground repairs, totaling $2,400. On paper, they weren't outrageously priced. But the pattern jumped out. On every single job, they undercut competitors by exactly $50 to $100. Not enough to raise eyebrows, but just enough to win every bid. It was like watching someone cheat at cards with a marked deck. Technically possible, but obviously rigged. The kicker? Meeting minutes showed Brenda personally voting in favor of every single award. 7 contracts, 7 yes votes, 7 checks funneled into her family's account. It wasn't just bad optics. It was a textbook conflict of interest. State nonprofit laws are clear. Board members must disclose any financial ties to vendors. Hiding that isn't just unethical. It opens the door to lawsuits and fraud charges. And the evidence was all there in black and white. Corporate filings, HOA records, bank statements in the association's monthly reports. Then the timeline slapped me in the face. September 3rd, Brenda began hammering me with violations. September 15th, my first mild question about ballooning maintenance costs at a board meeting, just 12 days apart. My supposedly defiant trash can wasn't the problem. It had accidentally parked itself right in front of a cash pipeline Brenda and her husband were quietly siphoning from 127 unsuspecting homeowners. The scale of possible violations made my head reel. Civil lawsuits for financial misconduct, criminal exposure for fraud, and automatic disqualification from the board once her conflicts of interest were proven. This was no longer just a neighborhood dispute about property lines. It was corruption, embezzlement, and a woman so desperate to cover her tracks that she'd resort to intimidation and psychological games. I printed every document, uploaded backups to 3 separate cloud accounts, and sent the full package to attorney Amanda Sterling with one subject line: urgent review, possible criminal liability. The balance of power had flipped overnight. Brenda believed she was battling some bitter electrician over a trash can placement. In reality, she was staring down the collapse of a fraud network that could end with her family bankrupt and herself facing federal charges. Tuesday morning, I sipped my coffee at the kitchen window as her Escalade launched yet another futile charge at my concrete barricade. The running total of damage had crossed $200, while my trash can still sat unmoved, a permanent reminder of her stubbornness. But this time, my thoughts weren't about HOA bylaws, trash cans, or her latest demolition attempt. They were about justice, accountability, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing a bully finally face consequences. That evening, my garage became something between a neighborhood clubhouse and a tactical command post. The workbenches were cleared, folding tables set, and a crude evidence board stood against the wall, strung together with red yarn like something from a detective show. By 7 p.m., the team was assembled. Mrs. Olivia arrived first, clutching jasmine tea. Jim Torres, still in his maintenance uniform, came next. Patricia Lopez walked in carrying a thick stack of HOA financial records she'd quietly copied. Finally, Dale Kowalski rolled in with a box of donuts, grinning as if we were planning a surprise party instead of dismantling local corruption. "Okay," I said, pinning the last chart to the board. "Here's the picture." The wall looked like evidence for a federal case. $23,000 in shady payments, 7 clear conflict of interest breaches, 47 harassment reports, and an SUV that looked more like a wrecking derby car than a luxury vehicle. Patricia's eyes widened at the financial timeline. I knew those numbers were fishy, but it's practically a system. Dale studied the vehicle photos like a mechanic preparing an invoice. "That bumper alone's worth $2,000, easy. Tires will wear out quick, too. Honestly, you're concrete." Trash can is teaching her a very expensive lesson. We spent the next hour outlining strategy. Jim would quietly document Brenda's retaliations. Mrs. Olivia would canvass door-to-door for resident backing. Patricia would push for an official financial review. Dale would lend technical expertise wherever needed. Meanwhile, Amanda Sterling confirmed the legal side was solid: harassment, fraud, and board misconduct. The only question was timing. Move too soon, and Brenda might destroy evidence. Wait too long, and she could finish her cover-up. From 2 decades in electrical troubleshooting, I knew one thing: complex failures demand layered fixes. Tackling the HOA solely on property rights was like replacing one fuse in a burning panel. We had to attack the entire system. 4 fronts at once: legal complaints, community organizing, media exposure, and financial scrutiny. Wednesday morning, the campaign began. With polished presentations and undeniable proof, I went door to door. The neighborhood's response was overwhelming: 89 signatures supporting property rights, 34 calling for an immediate audit, and 12 volunteers willing to testify at the next board meeting. Mrs. Rodriguez nearly slammed her door when she saw me. 5 minutes later, she was angrily signing the petition, muttering Spanish curses at Brenda. That woman fined me because my trash bin was out 15 minutes early. 15. As if she had a stopwatch. Our map of opposition was telling. Brenda's core allies were longtime homeowners who'd benefited from her selective enforcement. The undecided were mostly newer families nervous about retaliation or property values. Everyone else? Ready for blood. Media prep took 3 solid days. Channel 7's investigative unit loved HOA scandals, and reporter Sarah Kim had covered plenty. Our press kit held timeline graphics, expert opinions, and 12 minutes of edited footage of Brenda's repeated car collisions. The social media front lit up like wildfire. The Pinewood Gardens Transparency Facebook group ballooned to 67 members in 4 days. Neighbors shared stories of bogus fines, harassment, and shady bookkeeping. Someone uploaded a time-lapse of Brenda's daily SUV crash attempts, set to circus music, and it went viral across the suburban community pages. Meanwhile, my concrete trash can had become both evidence and local entertainment. Thursday morning. Crash number 53 left her Escalade with a dangling headlight like a broken tooth. Kids waiting for the bus showed up early to watch the daily impact. Emma's classmates had nicknamed our place the house with the indestructible trash can. Tyler even started charging classmates 50 cents to watch the crash compilation on his phone. By Sunday night, every piece was in place. Board meeting, Tuesday. News interviews, Wednesday. Criminal complaints, Thursday. Over 100 residents ready to pack the room, with 17 scheduled to speak. Brenda had no clue the storm bearing down on her. That weekend, she finally cracked. Desperation has a smell. Burnt coffee and cold sweat, and she reeked of it. Her tactics escalated from petty harassment to outright criminal. Saturday night, the hiss of spray paint yanked me from sleep. From my window, I spotted a crouched figure by the trash can under the motion light. Brenda had crossed the final line. By the time I managed to grab my phone and rush outside, they had already disappeared, leaving behind sloppy spray paint that screamed "Move" in glaring orange letters across the pavement. The best part about paint on concrete? A pressure. Washer erases it in under a minute. The best part about security cameras? They capture everything in crystal clarity, license plates included, like the pearl-white Escalade parked 3 doors down during the stunt. Monday took things to a whole new level. Someone phoned in an anonymous tip to the gas company, accusing me of secret digging that might endanger utility lines. The inspector who arrived was polite but methodical, spending nearly 2 hours sweeping my yard with detection gear before confirming the obvious. No digging, no damage, no issues. "Honestly," he said while packing up his truck, "whoever reported this either can't see straight or needs a psych evaluation. There's zero excavation anywhere near your property." The first crack in Brenda's armor showed itself Tuesday morning. Jim Torres pulled me aside at the hardware store, his lined face heavy with concern. "Marcus, she hired a private security outfit to watch your house. Riverside Security. $200 a day over a garbage can dispute. She's lost it." But surveillance runs both ways. My upgraded system had been catching her late-night drive-bys, her bizarre photography sessions, and her increasingly unstable routine. She was unraveling quicker than a frayed extension cord, and I had it all preserved in 4K. Wednesday delivered the first hit that truly got under my skin. Emma came home in tears after overhearing Brenda whisper to another parent about bad influences in the neighborhood and inappropriate role models for children. The racial digs weren't subtle, and the intent to sabotage my custody case was obvious. That evening, I hired Beth Morrison, a retired detective who specialized in harassment cases. For $200 a day, I now had professional documentation of Brenda's stalking and a credible witness for escalation patterns. The attacks escalated. Acid, or something close, was poured over my concrete trash barrier. It left a faint stain, but nothing more. City offices were swamped with bogus complaints about my lawn, my wiring permits, my supposed violations. Even my business listing was spammed with fake 1-star reviews. Then Friday hit, and things turned serious. Tyler was in the driveway fixing his bike when he spotted something tucked under my truck's frame, a small black box blinking with a magnetic mount. "Dad," he called out, his voice tight, "what's this thing?" "A GPS tracker. High-end, $300 minimum, absolutely illegal without consent." I photographed it from every angle, removed it, and drove straight to the police station. Officer Derek Martinez took the report with the weary look of someone who'd seen neighbors go off the rails before. "Mr. Holloway," he said, "this isn't a petty dispute anymore. Unauthorized surveillance, stalking, harassment. We're moving into criminal charges." Meanwhile, the insurance fraud plot was unraveling. Brenda had filed a $3,200 claim for road hazard damage, swearing her crash happened on a city street. Too bad my Ring cameras had weeks of footage showing her targeting my trash barricade. 53 collisions documented, complete with timestamps, damage assessments, and witnesses. State Farm's investigator needed less than 5 minutes to decide. "Ma'am, this isn't accidental damage. This is deliberate property destruction with a luxury vehicle. Claim denied. Fraud division notified. The neighborhood was boiling over. Our Facebook group swelled to 94 members, each with their own Brenda horror story. Mrs. Patterson's roses, the Johnson kids' chalk art. Even Gerald Thornfield, her longtime ally, was backing away. By Saturday, Brenda made her 57th collision attempt, this one tearing her bumper completely off. Watching her crawl across my driveway in a pencil skirt, scooping up broken plastic while half the block peeked through curtains, would have been comical if it wasn't so tragic. By Sunday, my evidence file was ironclad. Criminal activity, notarized. Witness accounts, fraud documented, community support unified. Tuesday's HOA board meeting wasn't going to be a debate. It was going to be a takedown. But Brenda wasn't done yet. 12 hours before the showdown, she tried one last desperate stunt. Gerald Thornfield called an emergency closed session, muttering about liability exposure and community safety. From the blinds, I could see Brenda waving papers like surrender flags, while the HOA's 400-an-hour lawyer, Harold Masterson, looked like he'd rather defend mobsters. Patricia Lopez texted me live updates. She's claiming you made terrorist threats, wants emergency powers to confiscate your modifications. Harold looks ready to quit. The cover-up was as clumsy as her car wrecks. Someone had backdated conflict of interest forms for Whitmore Construction, but digital timestamps on the email server exposed the lie instantly. Meanwhile, the insurance probe gathered steam. Investigator Maria Santos subpoenaed board financials, meeting records, and all correspondence with Brenda. The trail was glaring. Then came the twist. Tuesday afternoon, Richard Whitmore, her own husband, called me directly. His voice trembled. "Marcus, this has to stop. She's burned through $8,000 on lawyers and repairs. Our insurance is gone. The business is tanking. Contracts are collapsing. Please, what would it take to end this?" I almost pitied him. Almost. "Richard," I said, "your wife stalked my kids, vandalized my property, filed fraudulent claims, and stole from over 100 homeowners. This doesn't go away with a check." 2 hours before the meeting, Brenda tried her final Hail Mary, an emergency restraining order. She submitted fake voicemails, doctored photos, and witness statements from people who didn't exist. The judge didn't waste 10 minutes. "Miss Whitmore, these recordings are clearly altered. These photos are staged. These witnesses are fictitious. Filing false evidence is contempt of court. This is your warning." But her troubles were multiplying faster than her bumper replacements. The state insurance commissioner was building a fraud case. The DA's office was reviewing stalking charges, and the IRS now had full documentation of unreported income tied to her contracts. By the time the clock crept toward 6:15 p.m., the neighborhood center's parking lot looked like a shopping mall on Black Friday. Every inch of Maple Street was jammed with vehicles, and residents who couldn't find space were trekking in from side streets, folding chairs, and protest signs tucked under their arms. News crews had already staked their claim. Channel 7 rolled in precisely at 5:30, followed by Channel 12 and a couple of local reporters who smelled a scandal brewing. Inside, the tension was thick enough to slice with a kitchen knife. The meeting room, rated for maybe 40 people, bulged with nearly 120 furious homeowners pressed shoulder to shoulder, with overflow crowds stretching into the hallway. The air reeked of stale coffee, anxiety, and sweat. When Brenda finally showed up, late, of course, she was flanked by Harold Masterson, her lawyer, and carried herself like a queen dragged unwillingly to her own trial. She had ditched her trademark navy blazer for a grim black suit that felt more funeral than business casual. Even from the third row, I could see her trembling hands. Gerald Thornfield, the board's vice chair, kept tugging at his tie like the knot was choking him. The intimidation strategy? A complete flop. Masterson launched into a scripted lecture about disruptive residents and petty grievances. But before he could get rolling, Mrs. Olivia rose to her feet, holding a stack of neatly typed witness statements. "Excuse me," she said in her careful, accented English, "but which one of us is guilty of insurance fraud and pocketing HOA money?" The eruption of applause and laughter nearly shook the windows. One after another, 17 neighbors lined up with binders, photos, receipts, proof of harassment, vandalism, and shady financial dealings. 3 bankers' boxes worth of evidence sat by the podium like props in a courtroom drama. And yet the real hammer hadn't even dropped. At 6:45 sharp, just as Brenda tried to deflect a question about overpriced construction contracts, Officer Derek Martinez stepped into the room. He carried an official folder under his arm, the kind no one wants to see. "Sorry to break in," he said into the hush that fell instantly, "but I have a warrant related to insurance fraud and stalking charges." Brenda's face drained, of color faster than antifreeze leaking from her battered Escalade. Masterson leaned in, whispering frantic legal advice. Gerald looked like he was about to keel over, and that was only the beginning. The community center felt like a pressure cooker. 127 residents, basically every homeowner in Pinewood Gardens, crammed into a space barely designed for half that number. 15 reporters jockeyed for camera angles. The AC unit was useless against the body heat, and the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets circling prey. I'd staked my spot in the 3rd row, beside Mrs. Olivia and Jim Torres, with my infamous concrete trash can wheeled in beside the podium like Exhibit A. That 60-pound hunk of reinforced stupidity had become a neighborhood legend. Brenda sat rigid at the board's table, darting glances toward the exit like a trapped animal. Her black blazer did nothing to hide the sweat gathering on her brow. Gerald kept dabbing his forehead, and Masterson scribbled frantic notes. When Officer Martinez took his seat at the back with that warrant, the entire dynamic shifted. All that remained was the spectacle. Gerald tried to call the meeting to order, his voice cracking like a teenager's. Public comment began, and I was the first to step forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, unrolling my presentation boards. Like a lawyer laying out exhibits for a jury, this is not about garbage bins. This is not about bylaws. This is about corruption, accountability, and the survival of our community. Then I laid it out piece by piece. 57 separate collision attempts, each one recorded on video. A GPS tracker illegally attached to my vehicle. Spray paint vandalism caught on multiple security cameras. And finally, the bogus insurance claims. Felonies in black and white. But the real showstopper? The finances. With a borrowed projector, I displayed line after line of contracts showing nearly $23,500 siphoned from community dues into Brenda's family company. Each jaw in the room seemed to drop in unison. 7 contracts, 7 conflicts of interest, 7 breaches of state nonprofit law. Then came the video reel. A 12-minute montage of Brenda's reckless antics. Her car scraping metal, crunching, into bins, hurling threats. The crowd gasped, then laughed nervously. I ended with the line I'd been practicing for weeks. "Mrs. Whitmore, you've spent $3,400 on lawyers, wrecked a $60,000 SUV, committed insurance fraud, and stalked my family over." A 23 trash can. But the true theft is the $47,000 you stole from your neighbors through your construction racket. The crowd exploded. Cheers, shouting, clapping. Even the teenagers joined in like it was a concert. That's when Brenda broke. She leapt from her chair, shrieking, "This is harassment. None of you understand property values or community standards. You don't belong here. You're ruining this neighborhood." The racist undertones hung thick in the air. Channel 7's cameras caught every word, every twitch of her face, every hateful gesture. Masterson tried to calm her, but she was gone, snatching at my boards, trying to tear them apart. Neighbors held her back gently while Officer Martinez calmly jotted down notes. Mascara streaked down. her cheeks. I built this neighborhood. I protected values. And you animals turn on me like this? Nobody was buying it. Patricia Lopez stood and made the motion. Immediate suspension of Brenda from the board, pending investigation and audit. The vote? Unanimous. Brenda sat handcuffed to a chair while it passed 4-0. Game over. The fallout came. Fast. Within 2 days, Brenda had resigned, whining about a toxic environment. By Thursday, the DA had filed charges: insurance fraud, stalking, financial misconduct. Her contractor's license was yanked before the week ended. An emergency audit uncovered every last stolen cent. Within a month, homeowners got refund checks averaging $370 each. Early Christmas gifts none of us expected. Her husband, Richard, called me once, voice hollow. The settlement check's in the mail, $2,500. Brenda's moving to Florida. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But justice rolled on. Patricia Lopez was elected HOA president unanimously, promising transparency. Monthly financial reports, public contract bidding, conflict of interest rules, all put in place. The first project, a playground built entirely with recovered funds. The story spread beyond Pinewood Gardens. The case was cited across Ohio, inspiring a new HOA Accountability Act in state legislature. Channel 7's coverage won a regional Emmy. Our video, Evidence, hit 200,000 views on YouTube. The trash can? Immortalized. It sits in the community center lobby with a plaque reading, Property Rights Protected 2023. Now, every September we host the Concrete Can Festival, BBQs, bounce houses, legal workshops on homeowner rights. What started as harassment turned into a community tradition. The settlement money launched the Marcus Holloway Property Rights Scholarship, funding college for kids who challenge authority with creativity. My daughter, Emma, wrote her admissions essay about standing up to corruption and got into 3 journalism schools. My son, Tyler, runs a YouTube channel called Suburban Justice, exposing HOA corruption with teenage enthusiasm. Even the court system took notice. Our custody case improved when the judge noted how the children saw their parent fight back with evidence and law, not anger. My business grew from the reputation. Apparently, if you can dismantle a corrupt HOA, you can be trusted to wire a hospital correctly. Sometimes David beats Goliath, but only when David shows up with patience, proof, and 60 pounds of concrete. So what about you? Drop your HOA horror story in the comments. Let's build a library of corruption and keep fighting back. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories where ordinary neighbors take down the Karens of power, because justice tastes better when it's shared.